There are moments when a man encounters a woman. He doesn't know, and yet her image lingers in their mind without warning. She doesn't speak. She doesn't even stay long. But something about her presence refuses to leave. It's not love. It's not fear. It's a sensation that has no language, but it holds space in their thoughts. What exactly are they drawn to? Her silence, or the sense of being seen without needing to explain? Her distance, or the strange intimacy they feel while standing just a few steps away? She never tried to enter their world, but somehow the man finds himself unlocking the door. Something in them reacts, not with logic, but with a quiet tremor that begins beneath awareness. What they feel is not a choice. It's a possession, and the more they try to name it, the more it slips away. This is not about love in the way the man was taught to recognize it. It's about something deeper, something older, a magnetic feminine aura that does not need permission to be remembered. This isn't about kindness. It isn't about sweetness. It's about dark feminine energy, the kind that dissolves boundaries without a touch, the kind that makes a man forget he ever had control in the first place. If the man has ever felt consumed without contact, this video will help them reclaim their center, not by chasing her, but by naming what truly haunts them. Because if she did nothing, and they still feel overtaken, then perhaps what they're reacting to isn't her at all. It's the shadow she awakens within them. Like this video if it brought you value. Subscribe to Deep Modern Man to join the community and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss the next meaningful videos. Leave a comment and share what you're still struggling with. Your story might become the core of our next video. And now, let's move into the core of today's content. The reason dark feminine energy makes men powerless to resist is not because it attacks. It's because it refuses to play by the rules their psyche depends on. The man doesn't remember if they ever spoke, or if their eyes ever truly met. Yet something about her presence lingers in the man like a forgotten dream. There was no clear signal, no seductive gesture, no invitation. But there was tension. Not the kind that warns, not the kind that soothes. Just a quiet, emotional static the man couldn't turn off. And in that silence, they began to unravel. It wasn't attraction they could name. It wasn't desire they could act on. It was something far more destabilizing, something that made their breath shallow whenever she walked into the room. If she did nothing, why can't the man stop thinking about her? Why does her face emerge in moments of stillness, in the few seconds before sleep, or in the middle of a drive when their guard is down? If there was no relationship, no shared moment, then what exactly is the man trying so hard to forget? The man has been here before. That haunting echo, that belief it's just in their head, they've told themselves it's fantasy, projection, a passing thought. But this time feels different. She hasn't touched the man, but she's touched something no one else ever reached. Now, when the man thinks of her, it isn't longing for her. It's longing for the version of themselves that only appeared in her presence, the one they didn't even know was missing. In the face of dark feminine energy, the man finds no reward, no punishment, just a presence that refuses to cooperate with their usual relational patterns. She doesn't comfort their wounds, but neither does she poke them. She simply doesn't mirror their persona, and that is what begins to shatter them. The persona, as Carl Jung defined it, is that which in reality one is not, but which oneself as well as others think one is. Her refusal to validate that mask leaves it unsupported, and without reflection, it begins to dissolve. She doesn't need to confront the man's defenses. Her silence is already a confrontation. She doesn't reject their performance. She simply doesn't attend the show. This is not the start of a relationship. This is the start of collapse. The collapse of emotional certainty, of the man's ability to define themselves through interaction. What dark feminine energy does is subtle, but surgical. She doesn't enter the man's life. She disables the scaffolding that holds their image together. It isn't that she's powerful. It's that the man's power was never theirs. It was borrowed from the image they kept alive in the eyes of others. And now, she doesn't give them that. If the man finds themselves obsessed with a woman who never asked to stay, maybe she never came to stay. Maybe she came only to show the man the part of themselves that has never truly been free. That's not Carl Jung love. That's Carl Jung shadow. The shadow Carl Jung spoke of isn't evil, it's unconscious, and she brings it to the surface not by force, but by existing without need, without validation, without explanation. If nothing happened, and the man still can't escape her presence, then something in them has already awakened, something they weren't ready to meet alone. The relationship never began, but the shadow integration already has. This is not obsession with her. This is emotional obsession with the forgotten self, a self that the magnetic feminine aura didn't create, it revealed. And what it reveals cannot be unseen, because when powerful feminine energy doesn't need to speak, even silence becomes emotional dominance, and the man knows they're not in control anymore. The man can't explain what draws them in. She doesn't reach for connection, doesn't try to attract, and yet her presence triggers something that feels deeply familiar. There is no memory between them, no emotional bond, but still, the man feels like they're remembering her, not from this life, not from this moment, but from somewhere far beneath the surface. It's not logical, it's not romantic, it's a recognition that bypasses reason and lands directly in the body. Why does standing near her feel like coming home, to something the man never knew they lost? Why does she seem to carry a missing part of them, even though she never asked to hold it? And if she's not trying to evoke this feeling, then where is it really coming from? The question doesn't bring clarity. It only deepens the pull, because now the man doesn't just feel drawn to her. They feel known by her, as if she carries a secret map they have no memory of drawing. The man has followed this pattern before. The woman who seems different. Not louder, not softer, just untouchable. And the less she gives, the more they imagine. The man doesn't see who she truly is. They fill in the space with longing, construct an identity from silence. What she withholds, they complete with fantasy. What she never offered, they wrap in meaning. And the more they project, the more emotionally obsessed they become. Not with her, but with what she allows them to feel. Carl Jung called this the projection of the Anima. When the inner feminine is not integrated, it seeks embodiment outside the self. What the man sees is not the woman. What they're reacting to is an archetype. Carl Jung explained that the meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. But here, the reaction is not with her personality, it's with their inner archetype. She hasn't transformed the man, their own psyche has. And dark, feminine energy only accelerates the illusion, not because it demands, but because it remains still. In the quiet pull of powerful feminine energy, the man mistakes projection for intimacy. The magnetic feminine aura doesn't offer answers. It reflects absence. And it is that absence that begins to dominate them. What they feel isn't Carl Jung love. It's an emotional projection crafted from a lifetime of unmet emotional needs. She doesn't feed the hunger, she makes them taste it. If the man can see through the idealization, they may realize they're not in love with her. They're in love with a woman who never existed, a woman formed from the emotional shadow, not reality. And if they dare to let that image die, they may begin to see who she truly is, and more importantly, who they are without the ache. If she never asked to be their missing piece, then what inside the man assigned her that role? If she never promised completion, why does the absence of her feel like a wound? This is not about her. This is shadow anima calling. This is where dark feminine energy makes men powerless to resist, not by showing up, but by remaining unknown. And what remains, unknown, always controls the man who refuses to name it. The man doesn't know when her absence began to disorient them this deeply. She never created distance, but she never stepped in either. She spoke no words of affection, offered no demand for attention. Yet the man couldn't stop searching for signs that they still existed inside her world. The unease didn't come from rejection. It came from a void they couldn't explain, a gap that felt ancient. And suddenly, that silence mattered more than any spoken vow. Why does someone who never tried to keep them make it impossible to walk away? And if she never gave them anything to hold on to, then what exactly is holding the man in place? What force could grip them so tightly, if not a buried thirst for emotional acknowledgement they never learned to name? The man begins doing things that feel foreign, finding reasons to be near, interpreting vague expressions, replaying glances they aren't even sure were meant for them. In the past, they maintained control over their image. But now they can't tell what part of them is acting and what part is reacting. She hasn't changed her behavior, but somehow, every response the man gives begins to feel automatic, instinctive, compelled. Carl Jung described the anima as the internal feminine archetype within every man. It holds the emotional life they were taught to suppress. It reflects the part of the self denied in favor of control, logic, and masculine structure. When a woman exists without the need to be chosen, she activates that archetype, not with intention, but through presence. Her stillness becomes a mirror. Her detachment becomes a challenge. And dark feminine energy doesn't soothe the wound. It exposes the fracture. Carl Jung wrote, "The anima is the archetype of life itself. But life doesn't always emerge gently. Sometimes it erupts where the man least expects it, and when they find themselves emotionally attached to someone who never offers clarity, it's not about the relationship. It's about the anima demanding to be acknowledged. Not for healing, but to reclaim space from a persona that silenced it. What they feel isn't about her. It's about the power she represents, a power their psyche repressed long before she ever arrived. This is where dark feminine energy makes men powerless to resist, not because she gives them something, but because she reminds them of everything they lost access to in themselves. The powerful feminine energy doesn't need to act. Her refusal to chase becomes emotional dominance. Her stillness speaks the language of shadow anima. And now, the man isn't responding to her behavior. They're responding to the part of their inner world that has been screaming into silence for years. If the man finds themselves unable to leave, not because she asked them to stay, but because something unspoken has taken hold, then maybe what they're trapped in isn't desire, it's memory, not of her, but of the self they locked away. The self that longed to feel, but was taught to numb. If she never asked for devotion, then what inside them offered it anyway? And if she never claimed to love them, why does her indifference make them feel possessed? Maybe it's not about love at all. Maybe it's shadow integration disguised as heartbreak. And maybe the man isn't falling for her. Maybe they're collapsing into the part of themselves they were never allowed to keep. The man no longer understands what exactly they're being drawn to. There is no more admiration, no more tangible desire, only a quiet sense of unease that appears every time she crosses their mind. She doesn't have to be constantly present. But every time she disappears, what the man feels isn't the absence of a person. It's the return of a void within themselves. They never learned how to name, and even less how to fill. If she does nothing to make them stay, then why can't the man leave? And if what grips them isn't beauty or personality, then what exactly are they afraid of losing, when nothing between them was ever clearly held? They used to believe stepping away was a sign of clarity, that when a relationship felt unbalanced, the healthy thing to do was to walk. But with her, walking away never empties the feeling. In fact, it deepens it. The less she asks of them, the more she lingers. Not through attachment, but through detachment. Not through presence, but through absence. She doesn't need to speak, yet the man feels stripped of all protection, and that silence is louder than any conflict they've ever known. Carl Jung taught that individuation is the path toward the true self, a departure from external illusion, a descent into internal darkness. What the man feels is no longer attraction, it is confrontation, not with her, with themselves. The pull isn't toward her presence. It's toward the shadow she exposes, the part of them that was never claimed, never made conscious, and now that part is awake. Carl Jung once wrote, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious, and this is how. Dark feminine energy makes men powerless to resist, not by offering wholeness, but by withdrawing enough to make the fractures undeniable, not by soothing the pain, but by revealing that it never truly healed, not by holding their hand, but by standing far enough to show how lost they are without a role to play. She doesn't create chaos. She unveils it. She doesn't destroy the man. She simply shows them what was already broken. And if that truth feels unbearable, it is because the persona, their curated self, has started to collapse. The version of them designed to manage love, image, power, all begins to blur, and what remains isn't weakness. It is a question. If they are not that mask, then who are they when no one's watching? If the man finds themselves spiraling without a single word from her, then maybe she hasn't stolen control. Maybe she's exposed the part they never had control over. And if that part rises, then it's not the woman who must be faced. It's the forgotten self, the denied self, the shadow Anima emerging from silence. If the man's pain isn't caused by her departure, but by their inability to remain with themselves, when the performance ends, then what's truly left behind? And if they still feel emotionally obsessed with her, perhaps it's not about love at all. Perhaps they never saw themselves clearly until her eyes stopped avoiding the darkness inside them. The man never truly loved her. What they felt wasn't about the woman. It was about the part of themselves they never shaped into form. The emotional obsession wasn't rooted in connection. It was born from emotional projection, a response to the shadow Anima they had long denied. And when that projection met a powerful feminine energy that gave nothing back, something ancient began to stir. Not desire, not longing, something older, something darker. Dark feminine energy doesn't ignite what's whole. It illuminates what's fragmented. It doesn't offer security. It exposes dependency. What kept the man spinning wasn't her love. It was the magnetic feminine aura that revealed how unstable their persona truly was, when no one affirmed it. She didn't abandon the relationship. She dismantled the illusion of control that the man had mistaken for love. And now, the question isn't about her anymore. It's about what part of them still believes they're only worthy when they're seen. Carl Jung said, "The shadow is a moral problem that challenges the whole ego personality, for no one can become conscious of the shadow without considerable moral effort." He didn't suggest fighting the shadow. He simply showed that without the courage to witness our own unconscious attachments, we keep calling it love when it's only fixation. We keep chasing a woman when in truth, we're running from the fractured image we left behind. If the man is still haunted by a relationship that never began, perhaps they're not trapped in memory. Perhaps they're standing face to face with the shadow Carl Jung warned about, not as theory, but as lived truth. Maybe they're not broken, just unfinished, and if they can sit in that discomfort without running, something within them might begin to take shape, something they can finally name. Like this video to let us know it brought value to you. Subscribe to Deep Modern Man to join the community and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss other meaningful videos. Leave a comment and let us know what you're still struggling with. Who knows, that might become our next deep conversation.